The torches have been extinguished. Cornelia Maximilla is 27 years old, and she is walking through absolute darkness toward a door that opens only once, that admits only the condemned, that has not been used in 43 years. She cannot see the steps beneath her feet. She cannot see the walls that press close on either side. She can only feel the hands of the priests who guide her forward, their grip firm on her arms, their breathing steady while hers comes in ragged gasps that echo off stone surfaces she cannot perceive. She is wearing white, the color she has worn since childhood, the color that marks her as sacred, as untouched, as belonging to a goddess rather than to any mortal man. The fabric is thin against the December cold, providing no warmth, offering no protection. Her feet are bare against flagstones that have been worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, though only a handful of those steps belong to women walking this particular corridor. The smell reaches her before anything else. Earth and moisture and something older, something that has been sealed away from air and light for decades. The smell of a tomb, the smell of a place designed to contain death rather than life. Her name is Cornelia Maximilla. She has been a Vestal virgin for 21 years, since she was selected at the age of 6 from among the daughters of Rome's most prestigious families. She has tended the sacred flame that has burned continuously for 700 years. She has prepared the sacred substances that only Vestals are permitted to touch. She has lived in the house of Vestals beside the Roman Forum, surrounded by luxury and reverence and the constant surveillance of a state that considered her body its most valuable religious asset. Now she is walking toward an underground chamber that has been prepared specifically for her, a chamber that contains a couch, a lamp, a small amount of food and water, and nothing else. A chamber that will be sealed behind her, the entrance buried under tons of earth, leaving no trace that it ever existed. She will not be executed. Execution would spill sacred blood, would pollute the city, would offend the goddess Vesta, whose servant Cornelia has been for 2 decades. Roman law forbids the killing of Vestal virgins through any direct means. Instead, she will be buried alive. She will be left in darkness with enough provisions to survive for a few days, long enough for death to come through natural means rather than human violence. The legal fiction is that she will die of her own accord, that the goddess will claim her, that no Roman hand will technically end her life. The reality is that she will suffocate slowly as the air runs out, or starve over the course of a week, or go mad in the darkness before either of those fates arrives. The reality is that this is murder dressed in religious language, execution disguised as devotion, horror wrapped in ritual. She reaches the door. She cannot see it, but she feels the shift in air pressure, the subtle change in the echoes of her footsteps. The priests stop walking. One of them speaks, intoning words in an archaic Latin that Cornelia barely recognizes despite her years of religious training. The words are a formula, a legal procedure disguised as prayer. They absolve Rome of responsibility for what is about to happen. They transfer Cornelia from the protection of Vesta to the judgment of the underworld gods. They declare her no longer sacred, no longer protected, no longer anything at all. The door opens. Beyond it, Cornelia can see the faint glow of a single lamp, the only light she will have until it burns out, the only companion she will have in the hours or days that remain. She is pushed forward, gently but irresistibly. She stumbles over the threshold into a space that is smaller than she expected, a cell barely large enough to contain the couch and the supplies that have been left for her. The ceiling is so low that she cannot stand fully upright. The walls press close on all sides. Behind her, the door begins to close. "I am innocent," she says. The words come out as a whisper, hoarse and broken. "I have never violated my vows. I have never touched any man. I am innocent." The door continues closing. The priests do not respond. Her innocence or guilt is no longer relevant. The trial has been held. The verdict has been rendered. The Pontifex Maximus himself, the Emperor Domitian, has declared that Cornelia Maximilla violated her sacred virginity and must face the ancient punishment. The evidence against her was a confession extracted under torture from a man she barely knew. The witnesses were slaves who had been promised freedom in exchange for testimony. The trial itself was a formality, conducted without defense, without appeal, without any possibility of an outcome other than the one that has brought her here. But none of that matters now. The door closes. The sound of stone meeting stone is final, absolute, the end of everything. She hears earth being poured over the entrance, the muffled thud of soil sealing her in, cutting her off from the world of the living. The lamp flickers. The shadows dance. Cornelia Maximilla sits down on the couch and begins to wait. She does not know how long she will have to wait. She does not know whether death will come quickly or slowly. She knows only that she is alone, that no one will save her, that her 21 years of perfect service have ended in this underground chamber where Rome has sent its sacred virgins to die for 7 centuries. And she knows, despite her protests of innocence, that the real reason she is here has nothing to do with violated vows. The real reason is politics. The real reason is power. The real reason is an emperor who needed a spectacle to distract from his failures and chose her as the sacrifice. But that truth will be buried along with her body, hidden from history along with everything else about the fate of the Vestal virgins that Rome preferred not to remember. What you are about to learn has been systematically obscured by 2,000 years of scholarship that preferred to focus on Roman virtue rather than Roman horror. The Vestal virgins appear in textbooks as curiosities, as examples of Roman religious devotion, as footnotes to larger stories about emperors and conquests and political intrigue. What those textbooks do not explain is what actually happened to these women, how they were selected, what their lives contained, and what awaited those who were accused of violating their vows. Tonight you will learn the full truth about Rome's sacred virgins. You will learn how girls as young as 6 were taken from their families and committed to 30 years of enforced celibacy, their bodies becoming property of the state, their sexuality becoming a matter of public religious significance. You will learn what the selection process actually involved, why fathers competed to have their daughters chosen, and what privileges made the Vestal life attractive despite its costs. You will learn about the surveillance system that monitored every moment of a Vestal's existence, the slaves and attendants who watched for any sign of violation, the accusations that could be leveled by anyone with a grudge or an agenda. You will learn why Vestal trials increased during times of political crisis, why emperors found it useful to condemn sacred virgins, what functions these trials served beyond their stated religious purpose. You will learn about the punishment itself, the underground chamber, the ritual burial, the legal fiction that allowed Rome to kill women without technically executing them. You will learn what the archaeological evidence reveals about these chambers, what sources describe about the women who entered them, what happened in the hours and days before death arrived. You will learn about the men who were accused alongside the Vestals, the lovers who supposedly corrupted them, and the very different fate that awaited male defendants. You will learn why some men were beaten to death in public while others were quietly released, and what determined which outcome a man received. You will learn why this system lasted for over 1,000 years, why Rome considered it essential to its survival, and why the punishment for violated virginity was so much more severe than the punishment for almost any other crime in Roman law. Subscribe if you want to understand the darkness at the heart of Rome's most celebrated religious institution. Comment below telling me where you are watching from. Because Cornelia Maximilla is sitting in that underground chamber right now, the lamp burning lower with each passing hour, her air growing thinner with each breath. And I am going to tell you exactly how she got there. But before I reveal what happened to Cornelia, and the other Vestal virgins who faced Rome's most horrific punishment. I need to take you back. I need to show you how the system was created, why it functioned the way it did, and what made a small group of women so important that their sexual purity was considered essential to Rome's survival as a civilization. Because you cannot understand what happened to Cornelia without understanding the institution that created her and the men who decided her fate. The Vestal Virgins were among the oldest religious institutions in Roman history, their origins stretching back to the founding of the city itself. According to tradition, Romulus and Remus, the legendary founders of Rome, were born to a Vestal virgin named Rhea Silvia, who was impregnated by the god Mars. This origin story established from the beginning the tension that would define the institution for 1,000 years. The Vestals were sacred precisely because of their virginity, but that virginity was always at risk, always subject to divine or human violation, always a source of anxiety, as well as reverence. The historical reality behind the legends is obscure, but the institution itself was ancient and central to Roman religious practice. The Vestals tended the sacred flame of Vesta, goddess of the hearth, a fire that was believed to be essential to Rome's continued existence. If the flame went out, disaster would follow. Wars would be lost. Plagues would spread. The gods would withdraw their protection. The survival of Rome literally depended on these women keeping a fire burning. This was not metaphor. Romans believed it absolutely. The Vestal flame was the heart of the city, the connection between the human and divine realms, the source of Rome's exceptional destiny among the nations of the world. The women who tended it were not merely religious functionaries. They were the living guarantee of divine favor, their purity the condition upon which that favor depended. This belief created the framework within which the Vestals lived and, when necessary, died. The selection process began with girls between the ages of 6 and 10. They had to be freeborn, with both parents living, from families of good reputation. They could have no physical defects, no speech impediments, no impairments of any kind that might suggest divine disfavor. They had to be, in Roman terms, perfect specimens of female childhood. When a vacancy occurred among the 6 Vestals, the Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of the Roman state religion, would select a replacement from among the eligible candidates. In theory, this selection was random, determined by lot from a pool of qualified girls. In practice, it was often the result of political maneuvering, with powerful families competing to have their daughters chosen. Competition was fierce because the benefits were substantial. A Vestal virgin was freed from her father's legal authority, becoming sui juris, legally independent, in a society where women were otherwise always under male control. She could own property, make contracts, dispose of her wealth as she chose. She was supported by the state with a generous stipend. She had the best seats at public entertainments. Her person was so sacred that anyone who harmed her faced execution. She could pardon condemned criminals by simply encountering them on the street. These were extraordinary privileges in a society that otherwise restricted women's legal and social capacity at every turn. A Vestal was, in certain respects, freer than any other woman in Rome. But this freedom came at a price. From the moment of selection, a girl ceased to belong to her family and began to belong to the goddess. She moved into the House of Vestals, a luxurious complex beside the Roman Forum, where she would live for the next 30 years. She was trained in the rituals and duties of her office by the older Vestals who had preceded her. She learned to tend the sacred flame, to prepare the sacred substances used in rituals throughout the year, to perform the ceremonies that only Vestals could perform. And she learned, above all, to guard her virginity with absolute vigilance. The term virginity in Roman understanding was not merely physical but spiritual and legal.